Okay, author, you don't like marketing. You don't even like the concept of marketing. I get it. Yet, the reality is, if you want your book to be read and for your career to take off, you are going to have to figure out some kind of relationship to it. So, here are our 7 practical, tough love, rational reasons that marketing isn't a choice, but an essential for authors. And these will give you the push to stop indulging your very valid feelings and start getting behind your book. Think of it this way: after all the hard work you put into writing and publishing it, you deserve to see success. My name is Jenna Kalinsky. I'm the owner of One Lit Place, a full-service writer's center where writers get support, guidance, and hands-on help at all stages of your journey from start to publish. And this is the 7 reasons marketing is essential for authors. I'm sure the memory of writing and publishing your book is still deep inside of you. Even if you loved writing it and you got a publisher or self-published it with no drama whatsoever, it was still a long process and at points challenging. So here you are looking forward to it being launched. And if you are like 99.999% of all authors, you wish this was it, the end of the line, so you could just party and bask in a job well done and move on to something else. But of course, it's not the end. Rather, it's simply the end of the first part of a 2-part process, the second part being the marketing. You might resent or feel despair at this state of things, but leaving that terrible emotional paperweight on your chest is only going to hold your book and your career at large back and keep you small. So our 7 emotional support, tough love reasons marketing is essential for authors will show you the benefit of marketing your book and what will happen if you don't, which will energize you to go forth and get started. The growth, empowerment, and delight at seeing your hard work pay off will truly change your life. You have to sell your book because it isn't going to sell itself. You may have written a fantastic, beautiful, interesting book, but with over 81,000 new titles being published each week in the US and 192 titles in Canada, your book will wither on the vine almost instantly unless you create hype or give it some visibility that will set it apart from its peers. Naturally, a great cover is important because people eat with their eyes, and where your book is positioned in the store is also quite helpful. But beyond that, what will help it survive is, say it with me, marketing, or in regular English, the utilization of a series of known communication methods that all help your book get in front of its readers. More is better, the familiarity principle. You know how the first time you hear a song, you may not appreciate it or even like it, but then after you hear it a second or a third time, you start humming along. Or after you see a neighbor you don't know walking their dog a few times, you start unconsciously registering them as safe. Or even more insidiously on social media. You know, when you're fed certain social accounts over and over and over, they just start to seem familiar. Author Dara Horn says, what is repeated becomes familiar, and what is familiar becomes credible. So the feeling of familiarity through repeated contacts actually has a name. It's called the mere exposure effect, and it can work in your favor. Familiarity is hugely important for getting your book bought, talked about, and shared. So when someone is strolling through Barnes & Noble or scrolling through Amazon, any previous contact they had with your book out in the world, coupled with seeing it there on the shelf or there on the screen, mathematically enhances their interest. And that's when they think, ooh, I know this one. And they feel a small thrill in picking it over another title because it's familiar. So this means for you, social media engagement, online interviews, or any other outreach you do on their own or coupled with whatever early buzz your publisher is able to create, this gives your book a leg up every time. And if you're self-published and your book isn't in stores and you don't have publisher support, you do have a more difficult job because not one person on the face of this earth will know your book is launched until you start working the floor. So in your case, fanning out and getting your face, your name, and your book in as many places as possible is critical. Now, because of the volume of books coming out every week, each one literally has a shelf life. How is yours going to stand out and have staying power? Remember above all else that when a book comes onto the scene like it owns the place, that's less the result of it being better literature and far more the result of great marketing. Being knowledgeable and empowered is a lot more fun than remaining clueless and overwhelmed. Remaining in the dark about how to market your book while simultaneously really wanting it to sell is a recipe for frustration and anxiety, made worse by the nagging idea that you know you should be doing something to help your sales, but you don't know what. Deep down, I'm sure you're aware that once you lean into this part two of your book publishing experience, you know you will feel stronger, more in control, and be positioned to make informed decisions about how you want to share your book. Your dislike of marketing may be deeply rooted, though. Again, I appreciate that, but how are you going to help yourself break through? You can easily access resources. They're everywhere. You can read a book on author marketing, you can spend a few afternoons doing self-study or internet research, or you can commit to an online course and know that it will give you everything you need to feel a lot better and have a plan for getting started. Once you have a more cohesive picture of marketing, you will already feel infinitely more capable and, more importantly, realize it's not as bad as you thought it would be. And then once you start connecting with readers and see how fun and rewarding that is, you're going to find it easier and easier to keep going. Marketing helps you become a leader in the literary community. Naturally, you wrote your book because you wanted to share your stories and ideas with people who need them or want them. But as part of that, you also wrote it to become part of the literary community. The only way you gain access to this elite club of peers is to make your book known and to get people attracted to it and, by extension, to you. A wonderful, positive circle develops when you enter the literary space. Your readers, feeling identified and provided for by your work and meshing with your values and your mission for writing, become supporters and fans. They buy your book, share your additional content, and create free buzz amongst themselves. The work they do on your behalf behind the scenes takes on a life of its own, and it enhances your visibility, your credibility, and of course your sales. And then as for you, because this kind of enthusiasm is so affirming and validating, you feel fueled to do yet more marketing to keep connecting with your ever-growing readership. Even seasoned authors whose books basically sell themselves, they do marketing as well because they see how it engenders enthusiasm and trust, which of course translates to sales, fan retention, and audience growth. And then further, the more they're visible in high-level places like public speaking, interviews, and publishing short works or op-eds in the newspaper, the more they maintain their status as literary leaders and cultural fixtures. So where an uninitiated author might ask whether someone like Margaret Atwood, as an example, who is closing in on her late 80s, whether she wouldn't prefer to stay home with her feet up and a nice cup of tea. But of course, now you get it. She loves giving lectures, talks, and interviews because engaging with her public is what has vaulted her to where she is. And yes, of course, it fuels her audience, but it fuels her as much or more to keep going. This is your future to some degree as well. You only need to stay consistent and present, and your perceived value will continue to rise as a leader in the literary community. And then, of course, once you get your first fan tattoo from your book, you will know you have truly arrived. Your publisher expects you to participate in marketing. The act of marketing itself is far less about sales and far more about connection and communication. To be clear, the outcome of all the connection and communication you will do is 100% sales, and that's how your efficacy is measured for you as an author. So to bring up the math again, the more you put yourself out there, the more you as an author grow your influence and the more your book sells. So if you're working with a publisher as part of your advance and then any additional money paid to you for the sale of your book, they will expect you to handle some marketing elements that either they set up for you or that you do on your own. Got to sing for your supper. Sitting down with your publisher to get a very clear picture of what they expect you to do will A, give you a ready-made list of tasks you need to do, which is fantastic because already someone has done the thinking for you and now you just need to execute those things one at a time. And B, that list will show you where you can fill in the gaps with more intimate or personalized efforts that are quieter but still have fantastic impact. Having a publisher who is able to support your marketing is gold. Not all of them can nowadays. So if you do have one of those, be sure to have that conversation so you have clear expectations and know what you need to do. Lackluster sales and engagement can harm your career. Good book sales aren't only validating in the Sally Field Oscar acceptance speech, "You like me, you really like me" sense. Good book sales are also indicative of whether you're going to have a future as an author. So this part is a bit grim reaper, but it is the reality. If you are traditionally published, poor book sales can damage your chance at future earnings or a future at all. And here's how. If your book doesn't sell enough copies, your literary agent may drop you. or you may not be up for a second book deal with your publisher. And that's the end of that. If your advance covered a 2-book deal and the first one didn't do very well, the publisher may publish the second book, but with a scaled back marketing campaign, because they'll use the sales from your first book to anticipate the sales of the second. Or they could also, depending on your contract, decide to cancel the second book altogether. Worse over all else, to my mind, is that poor performance may cause your book to go out of print, which leaves you with nothing to show for yourself until copyright reverts to you so you can publish it elsewhere or self-publish if copyright reverts to you at all. So here's a fact. Some publishers consider digital forms of your book as published in perpetuity, which means if you have an ebook in circulation, you may never be free to publish the work again elsewhere in any form. So this means all your years of artistic struggle, investment of time and energy and capital and deep passion may end up in the discount bin. And then once those copies are gone, your book may simply no longer exist. So in blunt terms, that is a tragedy. If you're self-published, your intellectual property is at least safe and your book can stay in print, but financially it's a blow. You had to invest a fair amount into the development, the editing, interior formatting, book cover art, ISBN, and the myriad other costs that you incurred to get the book out the door. And then, of course, you believed in your project enough to toil for months to years to write and publish it. And frankly, for it to not do well is dispiriting. Marketing sets you up for a long-term career. While every book sold is a reason to celebrate, book sales unto themselves probably aren't going to let you quit your day job. Although, that said, there are some very clever self-published folks out there, including some big-name authors, who have managed. And I've linked to some resources in the description so you can see how those people have done it. If you're traditionally published, you may or may not get an advance from your publisher. And again, once the book is for sale, depending on your contract, you will either get pennies per copy, or you may not even see any money at all until you hit a certain sales threshold. Self-published authors do earn more money per copy, but given how much you had to invest on the front end to publish, that amount is still kind of a small drop in a larger well. So where your book will have the greatest income potential isn't necessarily as individual sales, but more as a hook to capture and engage your audience with additional book-related or book-adjacent content. That nurturing process is what turns book buyers into fans. And fans are valuable because they don't just buy your book one and done. They fan out, get it? And they do a lot of work for you. Remember that buzz we talked about? They talk about your book, they recommend it to friends, they get their book clubs to read it, and they share it on social media. So with each subsequent publication, you'll already have a reader base, or also called a platform, which sustains you for a long-term career. Marketing is also very much based on the law of attraction, or as I've sometimes called it, a positive avalanche. This means the more you do it, the more opportunities come your way. Once you're moving and shaking publicly, you're opening pathways to be invited to do speaking engagements, media appearances, partnerships, teaching opportunities, guest writing and consulting, you name it. And these are excellent for growing your visibility even further, because with each invited experience, you're now getting in front of others, built-in audiences, cementing your reputation with exponentially more people, and then bringing in some nice income for your participation. Book sales add up, of course, but these other opportunities are much more lucrative, both financially and for your career. Understanding marketing helps you collaborate effectively, save money, and manage your expectations. Here's the song of the typical author, and if you know it, and I know you do, sing it along with me. Can't I just hire someone? Okay, first, as a broad answer, no. No, you can't. To get a little more specific, while yes, of course, you can hire freelancers or a marketing firm to undertake aspects of marketing for you, and a publicist to handle the larger media around your book's launch. These are things you're probably not set up to handle yourself as easily. It's critical that you understand what these third parties are meant to do so that they can work with you, not for you. When you level too much expectation on them and fail to understand the limits of the scope of work they do, it will always result in significant expense, lost opportunities, and squashed expectations. In the description, check out the blog from author Kirsten Bell, who wrote a cautionary tale about how she spent many thousands of dollars on a publicist without understand what she was paying for. Again, can't I just hire somebody? What had she wanted? She wanted someone to do it all for her. But as she realized, that's not a thing, and she had to learn the hard and expensive way. In the case of marketing, when you spend even a bit of time on the front end arming yourself with insights as to how marketing works and what it entails, whether you use that knowledge to undertake some marketing yourself or simply to be able to collaborate with marketing professionals, or in a perfect world, because there are some things only you can do, a combo of the two, you will be way more equipped than throwing a bunch of money at people and crossing your fingers that you get what you want. Control public perception. When you were writing your book, you were the driving force behind the inception, the development. It's your baby after all. Book. It's your book after all. But if you let your book launch without at least having a hand in your marketing, it means you're blindly handing over your most valuable commodities, which is your book and your public-facing persona, to others and strangers. Letting algorithms, bookstores, and publishers take over and try to present the version of you they see will only succeed in presenting a fractured front. They don't know you, and they don't know your book the way you do. As for anyone you hire, if they don't have a clear direction and a cohesive author brand upon which to position their services, they're stuck having to invent some version of you and your project, which will never feel accurate or authentic. So this is a real downside for curating an audience, because if you present an inconsistent message or front and your audience doesn't have a clear and cohesive thing that you stand for to hang their hats on, they feel confused, like they can't get a sense of you, and then they keep on walking. So at the very least, if you don't do any marketing whatsoever, you need to create an author brand. This is not only an extremely valuable exercise for understanding how you want to position yourself publicly, but it also enables you to control your narrative, even if at that point you get others to help you facilitate it. And then if or when you undertake some marketing yourself, your author brand guide will be your chief emotional and logistical support document, and it will serve as the foundation for everything you do. It's such an alleviation to be able to refer to it and already laid out in front of you have a clear set of values, traits, and visual elements that will guide your way. In summary, nothing zaps a person's energy and verve more than being stuck at an intersection of ignorance and expectation. Taking some time and some care to enter into this second part of your book's life will alleviate you enormously, give you control, and ensure that you are able to make clear choices about what you do and how you do it. You hold all the power here. So rather than keep pushing off marketing because you don't like it, or because you anticipate you won't like it, or you might dabble in this, that, or the other without truly understanding what you're doing and the larger picture, or without having a plan, now is your time to step up. Grab a friend, or grab a cold drink, or do both. Find that book or those resources or our all-in-one online course. Confront your reservations and concerns for the greater good and dive in. I promise you, it's not nearly as scary or as hard as you may think, and it is empowering to know what's what. In the end, while there's no guarantee that anything you do will work, there is 100% a guarantee that if you do nothing, nothing will happen at all. Not knowing what you're doing while also being saddled with guilt for not knowing what you're doing is a preventable state. Knowledge is everything, and in that you'll see which activities you like, which you can use, and which will move the needle for your career. And all of that will shift the author marketing you do into a far more empowered gear.